The United Nations, everybody knows the United Nations. But many people think that the United Nations has no teeth, that they have no involvement in what's going on in this country, and that is absolutely false.
As elected official of Dutchess County government, including 20 years as the county executive elected by the people of Dutchess 5 times.
Okay. You study house? Excuse me, you have some nerves. You are one of the biggest implementers of this. Yes, sir, you are.
More than I seem to speak, I'd be happy to allow you.
So much.
As a matter of my own view, I share probably the concerns that you have and many people have about what's referred to as Agenda 21 as a fascist, socialist, leftist, radical, wacky agenda. I don't dispute that. As a matter of fact, I have similar concerns. I respect your alert to incrementalism because it's a serious threat.
When did you learn about Agenda 21?
I've known about it for years and years and years and years and years and years and years.
Well,
I've been at 100 meetings for those things.
Okay, and so...
At the national level, state level, in Washington, known about it for decades.
I want to ask you a question. You knew about Agenda 21 while you were an elected representative. Did you talk to people about Agenda 21 and what you were afraid of?
No, because I'm not a United Nations official or federal official. I function as a county official.
I want to ask you a question. You knew about Agenda 21 while you were an elected representative. Did you talk to people about Agenda 21 and what you were afraid of?
No, because I'm not a United Nations official or federal official. I function as a county official.
I guess you get the point? Okay. The point is that a lot of elected officials do know about it. The ones that are in 20 years or more definitely know about it. A lot of the newer ones do not know about it, and they're implementing it because they don't know what it is that they're implementing.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
From 1945 and the end of the war through 1989 and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we've got a lot of disorder. And still, and after 9/11, we've been more sensitive to it.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say, this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
Will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity and it's a big crisis.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume and ask leave to revise and extend my remarks.
Objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H. Congress 353,
Elliot
expressing
Engel.
the sense of the Congress that the United States should assume a strong leadership role in implementing the decisions made at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, and developing a national strategy to implement Agenda 21 and other Earth Summit agreements through domestic policy and foreign policy, by cooperating with all countries to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment, and by supporting and participating in a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission as amended. I now yield to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Pelosi, the sponsor, to explain the resolution.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman for yielding. In fact, it is a very simple resolution which the gentleman has just mostly explained. I would, Mr. Speaker, like to take a moment to thank Chairman Fassell and Mr. Broomfield, Mr. Yatra and Mr. Beerider, the chair and ranking member of the subcommittee, and the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their assistance in expediting consideration of this legislation. The Earth Summit Environmental Leadership Act, as this is known, presents us with an opportunity to follow up on the important work of the Earth Summit to develop its blueprint, Agenda 21, for global environmental action. HCON Res 353 outlines a comprehensive national strategy for sustainable development in accordance with the principles of Agenda 21 to be coordinated under the leadership of a specific office and the direction of a high-level government official. The resolution also urges the United States to identify and initiate further agreements to protect the global environment and to support the creation of a high-level United Nations Sustainable Development Commission headed by an Undersecretary General. Third and lastly, the President is urged to report to Congress on the progress made on with this action. HCON Res 353 is supported by the administration. I have been in contact with the appropriate offices of the State Department and have incorporated their suggestions into the resolution. The 71 co-sponsors of this measure include one-half the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee and all of the House delegates to the Earth Summit. It is also supported by the major United States non-governmental organizations concerned with the environmental issues. The Earth Summit presented world leaders with an opportunity that should not be lost. We must now embark on a new course that will sustain our planet and its resources for the benefit of future generations. This resolution calls on the United States to assert its leadership to achieve this goal. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution. Thanks again to the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee for their recognition of the importance and timeliness of this resolution. We must make the promise of Rio a reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, the definition of sustainable development as defined by the United Nations is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Well, before they did Agenda 21, there was another document that was written. There was a lot of stuff that went on before Agenda 21 treaty or agreement was signed, where these things were happening but not on a formal basis. And in 1987, the UN released what was called the Brundtland Report, also called Our Common Future, which included what is now one of the most widely recognized definitions of sustainable development. And the woman, Gro Harlem Brundtland, was the president of the World Socialist Party who wrote this document. And the definition that she came up with and that is still being used is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, some time back when I was first wondering what to do about this, I made some calls to some of our elected officials, and I happened to call David Carlucci, our senator. And I said to him, David, did you ever hear of this Agenda 21? And he said, no, what is it? So I started to explain it to him to the best that I could in a telephone conversation, and he said he would look into it, and he did look into it, and he wrote me a letter back. And in this letter, the two main things that I want to point out is that he referred to, and this is before anyone would admit there was a UN Agenda 21. The minute you brought this up, people would say, conspiracy theory, tin hat person, what I still don't know what that means, but that's what would happen, okay? But I was really happy because he didn't call it a conspiracy theory. He said it's the action plan of the United Nations related to sustainable global development. Then he said, I, like yourself, understand that legislation proposed at the federal and global level will have fiscal implications on local communities. Then I wrote to our Senator Schumer. I love that guy. My favorite. He wrote me a letter back. I asked him also if he ever heard about Agenda 21. He wrote back, Agenda 21 is a voluntary action plan as opposed to a legally binding treaty developed by the UN. He said there was neither a formal debate nor vote in the U.S. Senate because Agenda 21 is not a treaty and therefore has no legal authority. He said it aims at preparing primarily developing nations in the long-term goal of sustainable development. I believe the long-term goal is an important one. Therefore, Agenda 21 does not lawfully infringe upon U.S. citizens' right to private property. So I was really happy that he also admitted that there is a UN Agenda 21. So basically what they were calling it is a thing called soft law, as opposed to hard law. Soft law is it was a treaty that was signed, but it was never ratified by the Senate. So it became law in this country through different means, which I'll get into. Here's the book. I actually have it. It's a real book. It's torn and tattered because I've used it a lot. This is the book, Agenda 21. It's got a little bit over 300 pages, and the word sustainable development is in that book 57 times. I have it in a PDF form, so I counted it to find out. Because sustainable development is the code word for Agenda 21. So in this country, we call it sustainable development, and nobody knows that it's a UN program, that it originated from the UN. Clinton got in the next administration, and what he did was he created an executive order, Executive Order 12852, and he created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. Here I found this website, Westchester Community Foundation. This is a nonprofit organization, and they also have the same definition. Sustainable communities strive to meet present without compromising the future ability. So you could see that all of this is the same. Common Core is coming out of this. The education, the UN Arms Trade Treaty is coming out of this. It's all related to this. This is in the driver's seat. This is what's causing everything that you're seeing that's happening. What's interesting about the Council for Sustainable Development is that its members included federal legislative agencies, huge corporations, United Nations environmental, non-governmental organizations. American tax dollars are used to implement Agenda 21. This is one of the reasons why we keep seeing our taxes go up every single year. Here was who was on the council, and if you notice, HUD, who was the secretary of HUD at the time? Andrew Cuomo. So our governor sat on this council, and he learned how to implement sustainable development on a national level before he became our governor. In 1998, they had in the Federal Register, here's proof that they used Agenda 21 to implement sustainable development. It says in here, the Sustainable Development Challenge Grant Program is a step in implementing Agenda 21. How much more clear can you be? It's in the Federal Register. Nancy Pelosi said it. This is not a conspiracy theory. What this is a conspiracy. Here was another executive order. This was created by Obama. He formed the White House Rural Council to expand sustainable development to control all food, fiber, and energy. During the Obama administration, the Partnership for Sustainable Communities was created so that the DOT, HUD, and the EPA could create a partnership to work together to implement sustainable development on the federal level. So on the state and local level, we have laws and zoning codes that have been put into place that reflect these policies and restrict property rights. These things restrict our property rights and they drain our tax money. Okay, so when they tell you that it's not, like Chuck Schumer said, oh, it's not binding, it's not this, it's not that. Executive orders, laws, acts, zoning codes, all these things are binding. And they used Agenda 21 as the blueprint for all of this stuff. So, you know, at this point, their denial is just totally ridiculous. Anyone who's looking can see this.
Lynn?
Yes.
When they talked on the radio last night, they discussed that how it's going to actually affect people that are selling their home, and I heard this years ago, but people that are selling their home or have to actually have it amazingly efficient and green to sell it. So it's going to be costing people that are going to be selling their home tens of thousands of dollars to get their house up to par to actually sell their home.
Right, and people cannot hardly afford to pay their mortgage right now. Procedures involving land trusts are not open to the public scrutiny, okay? So if the property goes into a land trust, like if you sell your house, the deed is recorded. These they have lots of these land trust companies like Scenic Hudson, these big environmental companies. They all buy up this property and nobody can see, you know, it's not open to the public. You can't see the land transfers. They get tax dollars, they receive government benefits, no audits are conducted. They're 501c3s, they get tax exempt status, they're not subject to Freedom of Information laws. The land transfers are, okay, I said that already, and the property's tied up forever. And open space projects drain our tax dollars with government-funded grants. Okay, regionalism. Does anybody know what regionalism is? Have you ever heard that term before? Okay, in the state of New York, Governor Cuomo is implementing regional councils which create regionalism. This serves to take power away from local elected officials and puts it in the hands of unelected appointed committees by the governor and accountable to the governor, not to the people. These are the Mid-Hudson Regional Councils. This is the map. He took New York State and he divided it up into 10 regional areas. So we have the Mid-Hudson region, which consists of 7 counties. Regionalism must precede globalism. We foresee a seamless system of governance from local communities, individual states, regional unions, and up through to the United Nations itself. This was a statement by the UN Commission on Global Governance. Crazy. Right here we have the page from the website of the Mid-Hudson Regional Committee. It's on the website. If you look it up, they have their own website. And if you look at this, I went through the names on here. Number one, many of these council members, they're all appointed, they're not elected, and they make decisions on behalf of what happens to certain things concerning grant monies that are given out in our area. We didn't elect them, we can't unelect them. They're not accountable to us, they're only accountable to the governor. So I looked them up, and a lot of them received millions of dollars in grant money themselves, of our tax money, for certain businesses that they have. The head of it, Marist College, and this guy from Regeneron, they've received millions of dollars. Not too long ago, when they gave the first rounds of awards out, our Ken Zabrowski, he was in the patch, and it said here, the past 2 rounds of awards were supposed to be administered by a neutral group of stakeholders in the business community, but legislators like myself have not had a role in the decision-making process beyond appropriating the funds. Regionalism is about restructuring government. All of these programs, that is exactly what they're designed to do, not only to control all our resources, but to restructure government.